Observer's calendar for October 2025 on episode 502 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We're amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everyone who enjoys going out under the stars. So, Shane, before we get going, I want to send you this. I was tempting you with this photo here, and I thought I'd get a reaction based on what you think of this light that somebody put up on the other side of the valley. It's not running all the time, but it does run in the evening, of course. And I'm going to send this to you right now, okay?
I am anxiously waiting.
And you can tell me, I've never seen a light this bright in my entire existence.
Holy smokes. Wow, wow, wow.
Yes, somebody has installed our binary star here, it seems, across.
Holy smokes. Yeah, that is unreal how bright that is. So there's a number of lights around it, just sort of yard lights by the looks of
Yeah,
things, and
those
they
are
all
just the
seem
regular
to
lights.
be yeah, they all seem to be of similar brightness. And then in the middle is what appears to be the sun, which which is an exceptionally bright light across the lake that seems to be maybe lighting up some things on your side of the lake.
Holy smokes. Like you can,
Wow.
the crazy part is you can see like on the other side of the lake that anything within hundreds of meters, you can actually see color in the photo taken at about 10:30 at night, like long after sunset, long after it's dark. And on our side, like just like you could like it was lighting us up, and it's like 2 kilometers away or like over a mile away. It's far. Um, I honestly, like I've seen lots of bright lights around in places, but I've never seen one that's that bright, like in an area. So I do know my only hope is that near there, not too far from there, there was a place, and it had two lights that were really bright, and and they ran them for about 6 weeks once, and then they went off and never came back on again. So my hope is there's something in wherever that little community is that people will you know I just couldn't imagine living anywhere near that. I mean, that's pretty wild, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully, hopefully it just disappears, or you can, do something to either block it or have the person tone it down because it's
geez.
excessively bright.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like here where like, and it's not like a light that, a neighbor might have on or something while they're, sometimes a neighbor has something on working in their yard or whatever, a yard light, like, like these things are there or happen or, you can kind of work around them. But like that is like I think the best way to put it is if you took like a 18 wheeler set of lights, like both the lights, and had them on high beam, they'd be about, I'm going to say about maybe 20% as bright as this. So it's about 4 or 5 times brighter than that. So you know what it's like if you're driving out in the open on a highway and you saw a tractor trailer coming towards you with its high beams on. Once it got to that distance, it would start to seem pretty bright. And if it was 4 or 5 times brighter, you know how bright that would be. Very bright, right? So that's what it is. I think what they're doing is lighting things up for ice fishing or something is my only guess. So,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, very strange. Very strange. Because you certainly don't need much light for ice fishing either. I
well,
don't
they
know
like
why
to
you would
go
do
out. I
that.
think they like to walk out and then wander around on the ice without having to carry. I mean, it's bright and like it's when the snow's down, it's bright, like as you
Yeah,
know. So I don't even know
exactly.
why you would. I mean, as soon as you put a light up, though, and I think what happens is people put lights up, and then as soon as somebody has a light, like you need more light because you can't see, right? Because of this other light, and it's just this sort of race to the bottom of light pollution at that point. But even with that light on, like we started to have trouble like walking around here because here it's fine. Like it's so dark that you don't really need a light, or maybe in a couple really dark spots you might need to turn your red light on. But in that, like with that going, like I almost turn on my front porch light because it's so bright around that that you need some light because the contrast gets thrown off. And that's kind of, I think, in general, how light pollution works, sort of for a bit of a crash course for people listening to me kind of go on about this, is that, somebody installs a super bright light and that person might say, well, it's fine. I'm only going to run it like once in a while between, who knows, 9 and 10, or a few hours here and a few hours there. But, the neighbor down the way, who can't see anything and has now tripped in the dark a couple times, or whatever, and doesn't even realize it, because like if you're not in the direct light of that, you don't really notice, but it was giving off as much light pollution almost as the whole city does, almost 60 or 70 kilometers away from here. And then, of course, some people sort of, inadvertently, end up putting up lights because they need to be out and don't want to be tripping anymore in the dark. Suddenly they feel like their, eyes aren't working as well, and go, well, I'll just put a light up. And then now that light is up, you know what I mean? And then it's just, and then the next person and the next person, and it just like, now it's two more people and four and eight, and it's just binary. It just goes from there. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
so
that's too bad. Hopefully,
hopefully we get that, something happens there or whatever. And I just can't imagine that people would let that go. Although some people don't, like I was saying to Mike, some people love it. Like my parents would be 100% all for that. They think it's kind of ridiculous how I'm about the lights at night kind of thing. And they, one of the first thing they did when I moved out of the house is they put a giant spotlight on our garage, like the double header things. And then I would go home on the weekends or on holiday, and I would actually pull like I would flip the fuse switch in the box, and then they would be annoyed, And I'd say, well, why do you want to light up the whole yard every night? Well, we just want to be able to look out and see what's happening in the yard. What? Like, how often do you even do that? Oh, I just like to walk by, and like that's just how people are, right? It's just human nature. But sadly, it has a huge impact on astronomy, has a huge impact on ecology. I think it's pretty wasteful. And yeah, it's really harmful for human health, been linked to all kinds of cancers, including breast cancer. It seems to be it's one of its leading causes. So that's the
yeah.
size of it.
Yeah, not much good comes from it. And we've done a few episodes on light pollution, and I've been on the light pollution news
Yeah.
podcast a couple of times as well, which, the entire focus of that is all about encroaching light across, really across the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that just never seems to be getting. Well, in some cases it gets better in local, I think,
Yeah.
isolated spots, but in general, it's like a never-ending battle, it seems.
Yeah. And I mean, I had all these links and resources at one point. I haven't gone on too much on the podcast about it, but I did a talk once, and I looked it up, and I couldn't believe like how sound the evidence is on it. I know from the study that I was working on, which was a psychological study, um, that the impact psychologically of working shift work and its impact on injury recovery and things of that nature. But being awake at night or being exposed to light in the reading that I did of the scientific literature seems to have as much of an impact. And then, but it's more on the physical, and once you start interfering with the your circadian rhythm and hormones, and once you start doing such damage to the environment, yeah, it's pretty impactful. So, all right, October 1st, Monday, October 1st. I even made up little charts. I didn't think I would have the energy to do this, but I even made up little charts on the Carbon Star Phomonoceros. I'm just reading that aloud now for the first time. Is at its best on October 1st. So that's one of those carbon stars. And this month, Shane, we have quite a few carbon stars and a whole pile of Jupiter double shadow transits. So people can look forward to those.
Neat. Yeah, yeah. So October 1st is the best for Fu Monoceros because of the variable nature of carbon stars, I assume,
Yeah.
and that it's just at its brightest point.
I believe that's how Marie did them, but I can really got to
Okay.
get her on. But yeah, that's when you can see it. That's when you'll see it at its brightest and best. Yes.
Excellent.
October 2nd, Minor Planet Ceres is at opposition at magnitude 7.6 down there in Cetus, the whale.
A bit of a binocular target if one so chooses.
Yeah, that's not too bad, hey?
Yeah,
I guess it says dwarf planet and some of the resources. Minor planet, dwarf planet, discovered in 1801 by Giuseppe Piazzi at Palermo Observatory in Sicily. So um, it's the only dwarf planet, it says, beyond the orbit of Neptune that does not have a moon.
there we
So
go.
there you go. This is the one that the Dawn spacecraft was flying to, I think, and saw that giant ice volcano, wasn't it? Wasn't this the one, I think?
I'm not too sure.
I gotta look that up here really, really quick. I'm gonna go ice volcano. And yes, it had that. It has a mix of salty water ice and mud instead of molten rock in it. So it does have this giant, almost looks like a pyramid of sorts, and it was reflecting light as the Dawn spacecraft came in, I recall, and a lot of people were debating whether or not it was like an alien city or something on the surface there.
Hmm.
On October 4th and 5th, each night we have double shadow transits on Jupiter at 12:49 a.m. on the 4th and on the 5th at 7:03 p.m. and that's Eastern time. And what I did, Shane, is in this podcast, there's so many of these, is that I just put one image of Jupiter showing the two shadows. I think in this case it's Io and Europa. And what you'll see is you'll see Jupiter as usual with its bands, and you'll need a telescope to see this. Probably what's the smallest aperture I've seen these easily in would be like, well, my 80 Achromat. Have you seen them in, I imagine, a 60 millimeter, one of these new ED scopes that are fairly affordable. A lot of people have, but some sort of high quality small scope or a larger scope of any sort should do the trick to see these, eh?
Yeah, I've seen it quite a few times in 80 millimeter refractors. I don't know that I've tried with the 60 class, so I'll try to make that my objective in October. Use one of the 60 millimeters and just see what I can see.
And what we're observing when we're observing a shadow transit is just like how we have lunar eclipses here on Earth. And a lunar eclipse occurs when we have the moon and the sun on sort of an alignment of sorts, eh? So that the shadow of the Earth is being cast onto the moon. So the moon and the Earth and the sun line up such that the Earth is in between, and the sun is coming from behind the Earth, and the shadow of the Earth is being projected into space. And this is always happening. And it's just during the time of a lunar eclipse when the moon happens to pass through that shadow, and then but when there's a solar eclipse, the moon is passing between the sun and the earth, and then that projects a shadow onto the surface. So if I get this wrong, then I'm correcting it. I've been awake all night, so observing, so people should know that. And that shadow is being cast onto the earth during the solar eclipse. And it's going to be this nice, very well defined shadow. And that's what we're seeing, basically like a couple little solar eclipses of sorts on the cloud tops of Jupiter there. And what's the best way for people to try to see these, Shane?
Um, I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Well, like basically, I think the best way to do it is just to run it in your software
Hmm.
and for your own time, because times are going to vary. So if we're out here, of course, it's going to be um, an hour earlier, so it's going to be like 11:49 and 70 or 6:06, which is too early because the sun is still going to be up. But if you were like in England, it's going to be kind of like the middle of the night. So you can run these in your planetarium software just to kind of see where they're gonna fall, or you can just go out and often what I do is just know that they're happening and then just go out during the night and then kind of check on Jupiter periodically and see if I can pick them up. But you'll need some reasonably high power. I think what would be good powers to try observing these lunar shadow transits
I think
on Jupiter.
Yeah, if I'm doing it, I'm probably targeting about 100 to 150 times magnification, somewhere in that range. It all has to match the seeing conditions that night. You do, or at least here, we typically run into a limiting factor with what the atmosphere will allow. But
Hmm.
typically, in that 100, 150 is the zone that you'd want to be in.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, when we talked about instrument size, there was, yeah, oh, I know the other thing to mention is that sometimes, not necessarily always, but sometimes if you have really good seeing in that, what you'll be able to observe is the moons themselves against the disk of the
Mm.
planet. I don't have the ingress and egress times here for that, and this would just start to get too complex and complicated for what we're trying to put out. But people can look that up and then see if those planets are going across. Free astronomy software that you might recommend. There's some pretty good free ones out there, I think, Shane, these days.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them to be candid. I use Sky Safari Pro all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a free version of Sky Safari or not, but that's my go-to for all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's what I tend to use as well. I have Stellarium 2, which is, or it's Stellarium, not Stellarium 2, but I also have Stellarium, which is the free software that a lot of people seem to like. It's got a lot of features, and I know when I started turning on all the features I wanted, it didn't work so well anymore. So, but I think for hunting down things like these shadow transits and basic purposes, I think you can use Stellarium. You don't need to go out and buy anything too fancy. And I think that Sky Safari does have a very basic freeware version that probably would incorporate this. But like you, I've had, and that's what I run in the observatory on an old iPhone. Actually, I have that right here right now, and then also on my computer for kind of working on these podcasts. Just it's a little quicker to use, I find, and I need to make a lot of screen captures for this and like presentations and that I might be giving. So it's a little quicker working on that than working in Stellarium, I found anyway. October 6th, we have the full moon and pairs right up with Saturn and Neptune in the evening sky, Shane. Congregation of sorts with the moon, Saturn, and Neptune making this little triangle. And that's a 5-degree field of view that I've put in the notes there. So in a binocular, that should look pretty cool.
Yeah, very tight. Some telescopes will give you about that field of view as well. So, yeah, that'll be quite neat to see.
Yeah, if you're using something like a small 80 millimeter or smaller fast refractor, then yeah, you might be able to get a 5-degree field of view with a 2-inch eyepiece.
Hmm.
Finder scope, binoculars, yeah, all sorts of options there. I've been using the Borg 54 millimeter finder scope on my refractor quite a bit, um, and I think it gives about a 5.5-degree field of view. So yeah, quite nice. October 7th, we have the full moon on October 7th. And you can also try to follow Sirius into the daylight sky with your unaided eye this week. So I was looking at Sirius this morning, just with my eye while I align the telescope using Sirius. And then, yeah, it's pretty bright. And I could totally imagine sitting in the observatory with the roof rolled back, which is kind of funny because right now that's how it is because it got stuck. And, and you can sit there with your lawn chair, and so you know that the sun isn't going to interfere, and you can just kind of watch it, and then sort of have an alarm set for 1 minute to sunrise, and then really start focusing on it and see if you can actually see it during the day, or just put a building between yourself and where the sun is coming up for two reasons. You never want to look at the sun, with your unaided eye ever at all for any reason, and
Hmm.
then also by kind of staying in a bit of a shadow, give you a better shot at doing that. And then also, and I didn't put the times in this one. I think there's a double shadow transit that evening as well, so people can look for that. And October 9th, we have the Endymion sunset rays visible on the moon. I put a little chart there. Endymion is or maybe it's Endymion, is a small crater, sort of on the upper right of the moon. If you're just like looking at a quickly orientated visage of the moon, and looks pretty far over on the top edge, just past Mare Crisium, and then another big crater. But I looked it up, Shane. Looks like these ND rays or sunset rays are sunlight that's like coming between the tops of the crater and I guess being cast on the surface. But never seen such a thing.
Hmm.
Gotta try for some of these Marine Unum targets.
Yeah, that's like I've never really heard of this before, so wasn't even aware.
Yeah. October 10th, we have the South Taurid meteor shower in the pre-dawn skies, but considering that was a full moon on the 7th, that's like a 3 day old moon, or a 3 day past full moon, that is, on the morning of the 10th. So I don't think that's going to be too good for meteor shower watching, hey?
Not really, and the rate on this one is quite low. You have the ZHR at 5 to 10, which
Mm,
there's not a lot to see, even if there wasn't a moon in the sky.
yeah. One of the reasons why I put all these ones in, these are all from the Observer's Calendar. That's what I base this on. The Observer's Calendar is a calendar produced by the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. You could say I'm the one who produces this, I guess, since I'm the editor. But the reason why is that I'll throw these in and I debate it. I put some of them in and then I debate it whether I should take them out. And and then I was chatting with my neighbor who's also a listener. He came over to look through the telescope one night with his partner, and we were talking about it. He was out one night and he had actually looked that there was this meteor shower on the calendar, and then and I'm not sure if he might have just been referring to our notes or podcast, and and said, "Well, hey, that's the such and such one, some obscure one," and they had like all these meteors, like quite a few meteors come in. So I think it's a little bit of a wild card. I don't think they have it like 100% nailed down how many meteors you'll see in some of these minor showers. And then as well, like if you are out observing, like the other night I saw quite a few meteors come in. And I meant to look it up. I even have the observer's calendar in the observatory, but I was distracted by working on the observatory instead. But yeah, we had quite a few meteors come in sometimes in some of these obscure showers. So I think it's fun just to throw them in.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, October 11th is the 2:42 a.m. double shadow transit on Jupiter, so people can take a look at that. I was almost reluctant to put all these in because if you think I've said there's a lot of these so far, Shane, you better buckle up
Oh, okay. I'm
because you
buckled.
are going to be shadow transited out by the end of this podcast, which is cool. These occur, and people should try to take, if you have a telescope, you should try to take a look at them. They're not really as much of historical significance. Back at one point in time, they were going to try to use them for resetting the clocks on ships. I come from a maritime background. And what you could do is you could take the predicted ingress and egress times of the shadows or the moon, well, the shadows, and then what you could do is know that it was whatever, like 2:42 a.m. in New York or whatever, right? And so you could set your ship's clock by it. But there's too much variance depending on where you are on the surface of the Earth between these to have any measure of accuracy, plus the need for clear sky. And I kind of feel like looking at a shadow transit can be a little bit of a challenge. Like you will notice them for sure in a small telescope, but I think the telescopes typically a ship would have, and then I think as well the rocking of the ship would make it very difficult to make this any sort of real accurate event to set your clock by. Hey,
Yeah, for sure.
all right. On October 12th, Jupiter is 4 degrees south of the moon. And do you know what else happens on October 12th, Shane?
I do not.
You should guess because there's another
A
double
shadow
shadow
transit?
transit at 9:11 p.m. on
Wow.
October 12th. There is just tons and tons of them this month. I think it must just about be a record.
Hmm.
So if you've ever want to see a Jupiter shadow transit, October 2025 is your opportunity. I've seen lots of these. And the more I look at them, the more I see. It's sort of a fascinating thing. I've been able to see some of the moons, like I think I saw Europa and Ganymede against the cloud tops. And when the moons are in front of the cloud tops, if you have a pretty good instrument of 4 or 5 inches in aperture or larger, sometimes you can start to make out some of the shading and just the subtle features of these moons sitting in front of Jupiter, which is really quite a awesome experience.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that.
October 13th is the last quarter moon, and the carbon star RT Capricornus is at its best and brightest. It's just right there, about 2.5 degrees to the east of M75. Have you looked at many of these carbon stars, Shane?
No, I've been mostly focused on double stars when I do my backyard observing. But I'm going to start switching over to carbon stars. Because how many are there? Like a couple hundred-ish?
I think so. I think there's like 30 that are really good.
Yeah.
And then again, this is sort of like a month that's filthy with them. I think we have as many carbon stars in here as just about Jupiter shadow transits. So
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot. So, it's another object that you can observe quite well from the backyard. You don't need dark skies. So it does intrigue me, and I plan to add this to my observing routine in the fall.
What I like is when there's deep sky objects and a carbon star nearby. And I keep thinking I got to make this a project because in this podcast on the 13th, we have the last quarter moon and the carbon star RT Capricornus at its best. And it's just about 2.5 or 3 degrees east of M75. So 3 degrees I can get in my 5 inch refractor and certainly would be able to see M75 quite well and this star RT Capricornus quite well. And then on October 14th, the variable star T Cepheus, although it should be T Cephei. I've gotten that wrong. What is it? Is it Latinization and whatever? Anyway, got that all wrong here. But we have variable star T Cephei at maximum magnitude of 5.2. That's pretty bright. And it's only a degree away from NGC 7023, which is the Iris Nebula, which is one of these nebulas that everybody seems to be taking astrophotos of these days.
Okay.
So that would be a nice pairing to see, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've put a few in my software, but I have to get better at making observing lists because I'm like, oh, I want to look at that. I want to look at that. So I keep adding all these targets in. And now this list that I made up this past week had 73 targets, of which there are some stars in there. It's just hard to find them for everything else because it's just this tiny little screen, so everything's jammed together.
Mm.
Now, the other big event, I mean, this is one of the best months we've had. The other big event, perhaps the biggest event this month, is that the tilt of Saturn's rings is at about -1 degree or around a degree, pretty much all month leading up to that. They're pretty edge on even now, recording this towards the last day of September. But as we get into October, they're going to even be more edge on, virtually perhaps even disappearing in small telescopes.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird observation because it's not as pretty as when we can see the rings and the Cassini division, at least in my opinion. But because this only happens once every, what is it, couple of decades, like every 20 years or so.
Hmm.
I can't remember what the period is for the rings going edge on, but because it doesn't happen very often, I certainly do enjoy looking at it, and it is a neat observation to see sort of just a line rather than the rings that we're used to seeing.
Have you been out looking at it?
I have, yeah, not much,
Uh,
but I have seen it a few times this year.
every 13 to 15 years. I just looked it up.
Oh,
And
good.
and what so like you said 20 years. So, they can come and hound you in 15 years.
Hmm.
Um, so what have you seen so far in this sort of edge on apparition of these rings?
Well, just how thin they are, but what I try to look for is sort of like I don't even know how to describe it, but sort of like because they're not fully edge on yet, there is a little bit of a sort of a top or a bottom, to that line, if you will, that cuts
Hmm.
across the planetary disk. So just trying to see like a little bit of darkness between that gap, and see it slowly closing as it gets to edge on.
Hmm.
How about yourself?
I've been watching them on a few nights, and one thing I noticed, I was chatting with Bill Weir about this. He's a really experienced observer out on Vancouver Island, and we were talking just about some of the weird. They're almost like effects of tricks of your eye. It kind of seems like the rings sort of almost like double back. It almost seems like you can follow them kind of going along, and then you get out to the part where they turn, and then they're gonna turn either to go around or in front of the disc, whatever, whichever way you're kind of tracing them along. And it almost seems like you end up going back. Like it's really hard to see that sort of is that like the ansay of the rings? But anyway, that sort of outer area of the ring. And to my eye, like they almost seem to kind of, because of that, it almost seems like they cross over in a couple spots. And to my eye, that it almost looks like stars or something. Like they're like bright spots where the rings, the thickest part of the rings are so close together. Like it sort of almost seems like there's a couple bright points of reflectivity there, which kind of makes sense. Like if you think about car traveling along on the highway, and then it kind of gets to a certain point, and then the sun glints off it, or you're driving along. Maybe this is a better analogy, and there's a building in the distance, and then the sun kind of glints off it in a couple spots just as you're going by. I think we've all seen that, hey?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm not sure whether that's what's happening or whether it's just something that's happening in the mind or the brain as you're taking the view in, and it's trying to interpret this sort of weird signal that you're seeing of these rings. But anyway, it's quite neat to see.
Hmm.
On the 16th, the moon occults Regulus at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So here we miss it. It's below the horizon, but it will be above the horizon for somebody somewhere. And yes, it's in the day. Sometimes I put these in the day, and then when some of the proofreaders are reading the calendar, they say, "But it's in the day," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, but I I think Regulus is bright enough that you might be able to see it. I don't know. If I don't know, I'll put it in, or if I think it's possible, I think you might be able to see that during the day. Plus, it'll be evening time for Mark Radici, and he can take a look at it for us. So."
Hmm.
I always think about that. All right. On the 18th, are you going to get it this time? What do you think's happening on October 18th?
Well, if I was a gambling man, I would probably wager on a double shadow transit on Jupiter. Am I right?
You are right. I didn't put the times in though, but really, double shadow transits, people should really look them up because you want to kind of watch it sort of play out a little bit on whatever software. There's probably like, if you go to Sky and Telescope, they probably even have they have a simulator for Jupiter. It probably would show it well enough there. So that would be a good place to go. All right, October 20th, we have Mercury 2 degrees south of Mars. I believe it's actually a conjunction. They cross their, or get close enough to the right lines of whatever it is, declination to actually be a conjunction there. And also on the 20th, we have another double shadow transit of Jupiter. And that's why I'm a little bit lighter on the details. As I was going and making these, I'm like, well, it's just going to confuse the heck out of people if I throw too much information at them. If people kind of get interested in this first part, then they can become a professional double star or double shadow transit expert on Jupiter this month. Carbon star RZ or RZ, Pegasus or Pegasi. I don't know why I did that this week. Is at its best tonight, and yeah, not too far from the very faint Planetary Nebula Jones 1, according to my notes here. October 21st, we have the new moon. So, this meteor shower is
Mhm.
the Orionin meteor shower, and it's going to take place during new moon. So, early hours of October 21st, new moon, zenith hourly rate of 20. objects or 20 meteors in the pre-dawn hours. And these meteors originate from Comet Halley. Just one part of the stream. The second part gives us the Aquariid meteors in May. So well worth going out to see. Last chance probably to observe a meteor shower without being too cold in the early morning hours, Shane.
Hmm.
Certainly was beautiful this morning at, I think it was 9 or 10 degrees when I was out. I bundled all up and I went out and I was like, I don't need a coat. So I took my coat off. Nice and warm. October 27th, the Gigantine is visible from dark skies. It's a bright point high in the south at midnight. It's not overhead, it's just very high in the south. And it's going to vary a little bit depending on where you are on the planet because what you're seeing there is, I think it's called the anti-solar point. It's basically some solar light that kind of gets through the Earth's atmosphere around the edges of the Earth and focuses on a point opposite the sun in our nighttime sky, and that's visible from time to time as a small bright point. I gotta say I've kind of sort of seen it once. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, Shane.
Uh, I don't think I have. I've certainly been out, under many dark skies, but it's also something I don't really look for. So I don't know. I guess I should really make an effort for this because
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if, it was there and I just never looked at it. But yeah, I can't confidently say I've ever seen it.
And then some of these things I find, like I remember the zodiacal light, which, like really the first time I think I ever saw that well, I think I was observing with you. Um, and I was like, oh, that's it. Well, I'd seen that like a whole pile of times, like
Mm-hmm.
it was like one of those type of things. October 23rd, NGC 1269 is well placed for those much further south than 50 degrees north latitude. I didn't even put it on. I made a little chart, but it's like it never gets higher than 1 degree below our latitude here, Shane, or our
Mm,
horizon here. So, yeah,
not
uh,
happening for us.
not happening for us. I think it's a little galaxy. But if you're further south, um, yeah, then you stand a good chance of seeing it. October 24th, Carbon Star S Scuti. I didn't do any of these right. Is at its best and brightest tonight. And this one is about, I'm going to say about just over 2 degrees south of M11, the Wild Duck Cluster.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny how many of these have paired up with deep sky objects tonight. I mean, the past one was Jones 1, but which doesn't really count 'cause I think it's like a 14th magnitude planetary nebula. But a wild duck cluster is bright. You can see that in your binoculars, and I'm not sure how bright S Scuti is, but should be able to see that in binoculars in a small telescope for sure.
Hmm.
October 25th, we have another set of shadow transits, and one of them takes place at 7:18 p.m. I think it's probably dark enough to observe Jupiter by then anyway. Should be creeping up on the horizon or just over the horizon for most people by that time. Also on the 25th, I think that's the minimum ring tilt day for Saturn. They're going to be at negative 0.72 degrees.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty tight.
that's your tightest night for those. October 26th, the carbon star R or UV Aquila is at its best, and I did get that one right. And it's not too far from the open cluster 6738, being just about 3 degrees to the north of 6738. So there's another pairing of a deep sky object and a carbon star. October 27th, NGCs 55, 247, and 300 are well placed in the south late in the evening. And these ones here, I can't remember if I've seen 300 or not. I think that's a pretty tough one to see from here. But anyway, NGC 55 and 247 are really, really nice deep sky objects. And you can see them even from 50 degrees north latitude. And they look fantastic, globular cluster and galaxy together. really quite close together. And they look beautiful. I think you can even see them in binoculars. And I was way down my astronomy path before I ever looked at these, Shane. And I was very disappointed that I had gotten that far without seeing them. I think, like, I'm gonna say I was doing astronomy for like about a decade or so, maybe, give or take, a few years, but it was a long time. And these are, if they were another 10 degrees higher up, they would be among like the very first targets people look at in binoculars.
Hmm. Hmm.
Not sure if you've had any observations of those or not. I feel like you probably have.
Yeah, I want to say maybe with the 12 inch when I used to have that, I think 247 for sure, but
Hmm.
I'd have to reference some notes.
Yeah. Just gonna look here and see. I've got my software all messed around with. I was working on a couple things, but I'm just gonna pop ahead. Let's see. NGC 55. Yeah, it's still below the horizon for when you're in your software, but yeah, NGC 55 is pretty low. What is it? 240. It's in the Sculptor. And then, but yeah, 247. That's the one. Actually, what I was thinking about, I messed up. What I was thinking about is the NGC 253 and NGC 288. That's the 288 is the globular, and then 253 is the galaxy together. But 247 is good too. That's fairly high up. It's just below negative 20 degrees declination. 55, though, is right on the horizon, and 300 isn't more than about 4 degrees up for us here. So those ones are probably better for people who are further south. I did put 55, 247, and 300. So yeah, 247 would be your consolation if you're as far north as us. But then I would say try for a 247 and 288. Those are my two favorite pairings when it comes to objects that are a little bit off the beaten path. So anyway, those are a couple objects you can see. And then let's see, October 20th, that's when we have the Lunar X visible. We've talked tons about that in the past. It's basically a clear obscure, a bit of an illusionary effect near the crater Werner, where there's, what is it? It's like two craters that are close, but the way that the sunlight hits it, there's sort of the part where those two craters meet, and then kind of double back the opposite way, kind of forms a bit of an X when the sun illuminates it certain times of the month, eh?
That's right. Yeah, it's quite striking, and um, it's a. I'd say it's kind of in the bottom third of the Terminator, and then if you keep going up along the Terminator, the same night that the X is visible, there's also a lunar V that doesn't get quite as much fanfare, but it's also kind of a neat thing to see. And again, it's fairly striking because both of these are like fairly straight lines, and anybody
Hmm.
who's looked at the moon with any optical aid, there's nothing really straight on the moon. Everything's quite jagged
Yeah.
and kind of just very inconsistent. So these two objects, or not really objects, but things to look at, are very like they really jump out at you.
Yeah. We also have another double shadow transit on the 28th.
Oh, this has to be a record.
I mean, it's wild. I mean, I could have made some mistakes, but I did run a few of these, and that's why I'm saying for the ones I ran, I put the times in.
Yeah.
For the other ones, and then sometimes see they're visible here. Sometimes they're going to be visible in the UK or Europe or in Australia or somewhere like. And we have observers who listen to us from both hemispheres and all over the world. We're very lucky in that respect. It's not a huge number, but it's a great number. It's just the right number. And yeah, so people should run these on their software. I didn't dig into every one. I just wasn't and I don't think it's necessary. If people are that interested, they can go off in their own path. October 29th, we have the first quarter moon, and Mercury is at greatest elongation in the evening sky, but it's very, very low, Shane. I don't know. This one is probably not worth looking at unless you are really keen to have a view of Mercury for some reason. But yeah, maybe you can ferret it out just 2 or 3 degrees above the horizon after sunset or something like that. Maybe if you are in Australia, you're going to be lucky and get it at 5 degrees up, but definitely
Mhm.
not one of the best elongations for Mercury.
Yeah,
Uh,
I won't be trying.
no, that one is not one to really try for. Also on the 29th, the lunar straight wall is visible again. That's something we talked a lot about in the past. It's this big escarpment, big line. It's kind of where I think some of the ground has subsided on the moon, and during a certain time of the month, it's illuminated for a couple nights. On the October 30th, the jeweled handle is visible on the moon. I went and got an AI report on that. I see you've got your cursor on there. Do you want to read what the AI gave us for this?
Yeah, it says the jeweled handle or golden handle on the moon is a clear obscure effect where the peaks of the Montes Jura mountain range bordering the Sinus Iridum Bay of Rainbows are illuminated by the rising sun at lunar dawn. This creates the illusion of a handle formed by bright curved mountain peaks against the shadowed basin of the Sinus Iridum.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's a good
So
description.
I've looked at it on software, and this was another one of those things, like we said earlier, you do all this observing, and I'm not a lunar observer, but when I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that. It was
Oh, okay.
like if someone asked me if I'd seen the jeweled handle on the moon, I'd say, well, I don't know, probably not. I don't think so. I'm not much of a lunar observer. And then when I went and looked, I was like, oh yeah, I've noticed that just in my casual lunar observing. So. I didn't look up. Are there any there? I thought there was a comet coming. Now
Oh,
that
yes. Yes, there's
do you have notes on that?
well, there's a couple here that I think we need to talk about.
Awesome.
Yeah, so maybe let's save the best for last.
Go
So
for it.
the first one that I'll mention here is C 2025 R2 Swan. Looks like it has a forecast for magnitude 6, and it looks like it's only an evening comet here in October. And I'm just taking a look to see where it'll be. Looks like it'll be kind of just south and east of Leo throughout the month of October.
And sorry, which one is this again?
This is C 2025 R2 Swan. So right now, actually, yeah, it looks like it's right around magnitude 6 right now.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Looks like there's been a number of observations reporting that magnitude. So that's worth adding to the list. Um, but like I said, I'm saving the best for last, which, if this other one holds true, look out. So the other one is C 2025 A6 Lemon, Lemmon. And it's another evening comet, but the forecast on this is magnitude 3,
What?
which is wild. And by the end of the month, kind of going into November, it's magnitude 4. But let's take a look here. Where is this one going to be? Looks like sort of by Lynx going into October. And right now it's got confirmed magnitudes of about 7, and, brightening. So this is another one that we must keep we really need to try for this one because if it goes magnitude 3, holy smokes, that's a bright comet.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I had meant to look at comets last night. I got distracted by that light because yeah, they're saying that September 25th, this comet Swan was. But where is it? Part of the sky. I'm looking for a chart here. Not seeing one. Okay, it's pretty low. It's not. Yeah, I never would have been able to see it last night. It's very, very low. And then the other one.
Yeah, lemons. So suddenly brightened in late August, but it's unclear if it had an outburst or if it's been brightening quickly. The data below assumes an outburst or that it suddenly turned on. It is possible that it may become brighter than our predictions. So we just have to wait and see.
Let's try and look this one up. A6 Lemn Lemn. Lemmon.
Yeah.
I don't know why I struck it. LE. I'm putting it in the notes. Yes. And then I'm trying to look it up in my softwares, but not really.
Yeah.
Oh, here we
The
go.
Skyhound website just has the September notes here. I don't see anything for October yet.
It says 13.5 in my Sky Safari. Sort of cutting along the northern horizon there, though.
Yeah, yeah. And on the Aerith.net site, that's where there's a number of dots on the magnitude, like a scale that he has here of observations that are climbing into the sevens right now.
Okay, so I'm going to put, because it looks like, yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to, yeah, anyway, I'm not going to bother messing around. People are going to have to look that up. But yeah, that's very cool. Well, yeah, thanks for that, Shane. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's exciting. October is really shaping up to be a month with a lot to look at. A lot of solar
Yeah.
system stuff, a lot of carbon stars. And if we have some bright comets, that really is the cherry on top.
Yeah, I mean, last year I think we had a couple bright comets come through in autumn as well, and maybe even the year before. I feel like I have a couple of these now, which is really strange, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Anything else to add?
Yeah, just one quick note for everybody. As usual, the show notes for this episode will be available at actualastronomy.com on our website for reference. We don't always put show notes up, but when we have lists like this, we try to, so that you don't have to be busy trying to write things down as we're talking, so you can go there and check it all out.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks for listening, folks. Please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers you know, and send us your ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.